There comes a moment in every life, especially as we grow older, when we realize that not everything that knocks on our door deserves a response. Not every opportunity is meant for us. Not every responsibility belongs to us. Not every problem is ours to solve. And yet, for most of our lives, we've been conditioned to say yes, to carry what others drop, to fix what others break, to agree even when it feels wrong, to comply even when it costs us peace. But mastery, real-life mastery, begins the day you start saying no. No to what drains you, no to what distracts you, no to what was never yours to carry in the first place. Because the truth is, most people are exhausted not because life is too hard, but because they are carrying weight that was never meant for them, expectations that don't fit, roles they didn't choose, emotional baggage that doesn't belong to them, and at some point, something inside you starts whispering, "Let it go, it's not yours." And when you start listening to that voice, everything changes. You begin to understand that saying no is not rejection, it's redirection. It's not selfish, it's sacred. It's not about turning your back on people. It's about turning your face toward your own life. You see, when you're young, you think that being useful is the highest form of value. You think that being needed equals being loved. But with age comes wisdom. And wisdom teaches you that being needed is not the same as being seen, that being busy is not the same as being valuable, that doing everything doesn't make you powerful, it makes you invisible. Because the more you say yes to what isn't yours, the more distant you become from what is. Your vision gets cloudy, your passion fades, your purpose gets buried under everyone else's agenda, and life becomes one long performance, a cycle of proving and pleasing, until one day it just doesn't work anymore. You wake up tired in your bones, not from lack of sleep, but from lack of alignment. And that's when you start to get honest. You start asking the hard questions. Why am I still doing this? Who am I really trying to please? What would my life look like if I only said yes to what truly matters to me? And slowly, piece by piece, you begin to reclaim your life, not with a loud rebellion, but with quiet clarity. You stop apologizing for your no. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop trying to be the hero in stories that don't belong to you. And in that space, something powerful happens. You start to feel light again, not because life is suddenly easy, but because you've stopped carrying what was never yours. And that lightness, that's freedom, that's power, that's mastery. Because a mastered life is not a busy life. It's not a life of constant sacrifice. It's a life built on discernment, knowing what's yours and what isn't, knowing when to hold on and when to let go, knowing when your yes is rooted in truth and when it's born from guilt. And here's the hard part. People won't always like your no. They won't understand your boundaries. They'll call you selfish, distant, cold. But that's not your weight to carry either. Your job is not to be understood by everyone. Your job is to be true to yourself. And the older you get, the more sacred that truth becomes. You realize that time is no longer something you spend. It's something you protect. That energy is not something you give away freely. It's something you invest with intention. That peace is not a luxury. It's a necessity. So no, you don't have to go to every event. You don't have to answer every message. You don't have to explain every decision. You are allowed to choose yourself again and again and again, because saying no to what isn't yours is the only way you'll have the space to say yes to what is. Mastery doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it looks like release, like choosing to walk away from what once defined you. The titles, the roles, the expectations that no longer fit who you are becoming. Because the truth is, as we get older, our definition of success evolves. When you were younger, you measured it in milestones, promotions, salaries, achievements others could see. But now, success looks different. It looks like peace, like waking up and not feeling behind. like not having to explain yourself anymore, like living without the tight grip of anxiety that you're not doing enough. Because now you know doing everything is not mastery. Doing what matters is. You begin to notice the subtle difference between responsibility and guilt, between showing up out of love and showing up out of fear, and you begin to choose differently. You say no to the guilt that says you owe everyone a version of yourself that keeps them comfortable. You say no to the fear that says if you stop doing, you'll stop being valuable. And in place of that noise, you begin to hear something quieter, truer, a deeper voice inside you that says, this is who you are now, not who you were for them, not who you performed as, just you. And that's where true power begins, in that quiet honesty, in that refusal to betray yourself for the comfort of others. You see, so much of life before 40 is about addition, adding achievements, adding relationships, adding roles. But life after 40 is about subtraction, removing the unnecessary, distilling who you are to your essence, refining your circle, reclaiming your time, reconnecting with the values you buried under survival, because for so long you were surviving, saying yes to keep the peace, saying yes to avoid judgment, saying yes because you didn't know there was another way. But now you do, and now you realize you don't need to be everything to everyone. You just need to be yourself, fully, clearly, and without apology. And to be yourself, you must let go of what isn't. That's why no becomes one of the most sacred words in your vocabulary. Not an act of rebellion, but of restoration. Not a defense, but a declaration. You say no so you can say yes. Yes to time that feeds your soul. Yes to relationships that nourish your spirit. Yes to work that actually aligns with your truth. You're no longer seeking a life that looks good. You want a life that feels right. And to have that, you must choose clarity over comfort, purpose over pressure, presence over performance. You must let go of roles that ask you to shrink. You must exit rooms that no longer hear your voice, and you must release the need to be everything so you can be deeply, powerfully, exactly who you are. That's not selfish, that's wisdom. That's what life has been trying to teach you all along, and when you finally listen, you master it. There is a quiet strength that only comes from lived experience, the strength to discern. When you're young, you think saying yes makes you generous. You think carrying the weight of everyone else's needs is a sign of being good, being strong. But as you mature, you discover something deeper. That strength is not measured by how much you can carry, but by how wisely you choose what to carry. And here's the truth. A lot of the things you once thought were yours never were. The opinions others had of you, not yours. The pressure to be perfect, not yours. The guilt for choosing rest, not yours. The anxiety to prove your worth, never yours to begin with. These were all borrowed burdens, inherited expectations, invisible contracts written in fear, and for decades you followed them without question, because no one ever told you that you had the right to question. But now you've earned the right to say, I release what was never mine. I don't have to carry shame that isn't mine. I don't have to meet standards I never agreed to. I don't have to be who they want me to be. I am allowed to be who I already am. That realization, that's freedom. That's the beginning of mastery. Because a mastered life is not about always having the answers. It's about asking better questions. And one of the most powerful questions you can ask every day is this: is this mine to carry? Not everything that feels urgent is yours. Not every request is your responsibility. Not every drama deserves your energy. You must become ruthless about your yes and sacred about your no, because time at this stage in life is not abstract anymore. It's personal. You feel its weight in your body. You see its truth in the mirror. You hear it in the silence between the noise, and you begin to treasure it, to protect it, to curate your life like an artist, not a servant. You design your days with intention. You fill your calendar not with obligations, but with meaning. And the things you say yes to, they are fewer but deeper. That's the shift. That's how you begin to live in alignment. Not wide, but deep. Not fast, but true. You start letting go of anything that doesn't honor who you're becoming. You stop negotiating with guilt. You stop explaining peace to people who only understand chaos, because you know, finally, fully, that you're not here to be everything. You're here to be yourself. And saying no to what isn't yours is how you come home to that self. There's a quiet rebellion that happens when you reach a certain stage in life. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. You stop living on autopilot. You stop trying to keep everyone comfortable at the cost of your own clarity. You stop performing for rooms that never truly saw you. It's not that you become bitter. No, you become clearer, sharper. You begin to honor your boundaries as acts of self-respect, not self-defense. You realize that maturity isn't about becoming more agreeable. It's about becoming more authentic, and authenticity requires separation from old versions of yourself, from outdated expectations, from the noise of people who never knew your full story but still had opinions. And in that separation, you begin to breathe differently. You begin to feel lighter, not because life has become easier, but because you're no longer weighed down by what isn't yours. You start to understand that energy is everything, and who or what you give it to, that is your real life's investment. So you choose carefully. You learn the power of silence. How walking away without explaining is sometimes the loudest statement you'll ever make. You stop saying yes just because it keeps the peace, because you've learned. Peace that requires self-abandonment isn't peace at all. It's a quiet kind of prison. And you're done living in cages built from politeness. You start to say no clearly, without softness. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Because clarity is kind. And confusion, compromise, and constant overgiving are not. You learn that saying no is not rejection. It's refinement. It's saying, this is who I am now. This is what I no longer accept. This is where I no longer pour my energy. And that might confuse people who only loved the version of you that tolerated everything. But that's not your burden anymore. You are not here to explain your evolution. You are not here to apologize for your peace. You are not here to keep shrinking just because others are uncomfortable with your truth. You are here to live fully, clearly, deeply as yourself. And sometimes the greatest act of power is not what you pursue, but what you refuse. You refuse to entertain the roles that diminish you. You refuse to keep doors open that drain you. You refuse to be available to things that cost your spirit more than they're worth. That's the turning point, when your no becomes a statement of identity, when it no longer requires anger to enforce, because it's rooted in quiet certainty. And from that place, life begins to flow differently, lighter, stronger, clearer, not easier, but unmistakably real. Saying no isn't the end, it's the beginning. It's the moment you stop abandoning yourself to earn a seat at someone else's table. It's the day you stop negotiating with guilt, stop explaining your peace, stop making your needs small so others can feel big. Saying no is when you reclaim your time, not just in your schedule, but in your soul. You no longer spend your days reacting to life. You start shaping it, choosing what stays, choosing what goes, and most importantly, choosing who you are without apology. Because now you know, freedom is not just the ability to say yes, it's the courage to say no without fear of what you'll lose. Because everything you lose when you choose yourself was never truly yours. And everything that remains, that's real, that's rooted, that's worthy. So you stop trying to be liked, you start being aligned, you stop striving to prove, you start living to feel, you stop performing, you start being.
And in that stillness, in that space where the noise falls away, You finally hear the voice that was always there, the voice of your truest self, not the version that conformed, not the one that played small, but the version that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. That voice says, you were never meant to carry it all. You were never meant to fix everyone. You were never meant to be everything. You were only ever meant to be true to yourself, and that is enough. So you begin to build a life where your boundaries are not walls, they are doors. Doors that open only to what aligns. Doors that close without guilt. Doors that keep the sacred protected, your energy, your peace, your purpose. That's what mastery looks like. Not perfection, not popularity, but peace. A kind of peace that doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be yours. You begin to walk through life a little slower, but with more direction, a little softer, but with more strength, a little quieter, but with more power. Because now, you're living from truth, not from pressure. And truth doesn't need to convince, it just is. So let this be the chapter where you stop chasing what doesn't fit, where you stop explaining what doesn't require explanation, where you stop waiting for permission to be who you already are. Say no to what isn't yours, and watch the life that is meant for you rise up to meet you.